Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. And so, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, we are gathered here tonight to try to answer some of the questions that unfortunately time did not permit us to answer in the two previous sessions of love and marriage in Islam. And so, without further ado, I will not preface this session with any remarks. We'll just open the floor for questions. Just bear in mind that our time is limited. And so if you could provide your questions with brevity, speak clearly and to the point, and allow as much time as possible for as many people as possible to ask questions, and also be very respectful to the moderators who will be moderating and calling on people, giving them the opportunity to ask their questions. So let's be respectful to them because of them, after Allah, we're able to function in a very efficient and effective manner. And if we don't allow them to do their job, then there will be chaos, and we certainly do not want chaos. With that said, let's go ahead and get started.
So, Brother Ansari, would you like for me to read the questions from the last sessions, or?
Yeah, we can do that if you want. We can start with whatever you already had written, and then we can let the audience in the room begin to ask questions live.
Okay. All right, let me go back to those questions. Okay, so one of the questions I think that is probably gonna, it had already been answered, which was what makes a healthy marriage. The other one stated, talking to someone for marriage, any advice? I don't think that person is in the room yet. So I'm gonna go with the questions because I do see the sister here who sent these two questions, which was, how can we find a way to use a wakil or a wali if the situation is that the wakil or the wali are unsuitable and has turned down all eligible intentions?
All right. طيب. With respect to the wali or the guardian, we talked a little bit about this on Monday, and that is that the guardian should never be a rubber stamp, and they should never be someone who's brought into the process once the process is pretty much done, just as a formality. That basically this is a function that somebody has to serve in order for the marriage to be valid Islamically, and so we're doing it pretty much under duress. We're doing it because we have to, not because we believe in it, its importance. We certainly don't want the wali or the wakil or the muwakkal to be relegated to this status. At the same time, the wakil or the wali or the muwakkal has to understand that it is his job primarily to be a facilitator, to be someone who tries to facilitate and make it easy for the sister under his charge to get married, and not to be an obstacle or the obstacle to that. And so if the candidates are, as the questioner asserts, if they are suitable candidates and there is nothing that renders them unsuitable, renders them Islamically someone who should be or must be rejected, and if they're not rejected, then the muwakkal or the wakil or the wali is not doing their job. If that is not the case, then yeah, the wali should facilitate. If this is what the the woman under his charge, if this is what she wants, and there's no Islamic reason or Islamic justification to disallow the marriage or to block the marriage, then he shouldn't block it. And it shouldn't be a matter of personal taste that if it were me, I wouldn't marry this guy. It shouldn't be that. But if there has to be some Islamic justification, and that sometimes also can be determined, or it can differ from time to time, from place to place, from woman to woman, from situation to situation. And so once again, I just want to emphasize and stress that the job, or one of the main roles of the wali, is to be a facilitator and not to be a hindrance or the hindrance to an acceptable Islamic marriage. That being said, if a sister finds herself in a situation where she is dealing with someone who is actually preventing her from getting married to people who are suitable, then that wali, depending on what his relationship to her is, he can be his wilaya, his authority, his guardianship can be terminated. And he can be replaced by someone who has a better understanding of what their role is and who will fulfill that role. So let's say, for example, that the woman in question is a woman who her wali is the imam of the local masjid, because she doesn't have a male relative who is Muslim. And so automatically, as the Prophet said in the hadith, وَالسُّلْطَانُ وَلِيُّ مَنْ لَا وَلِيَّ لَهُ. He said that the sultan, the ruler, is the wali, the guardian, by default, of the person who has no guardian. In our country, in our setting, which it's not a Muslim dominant country, we don't have a Muslim ruler per se. The scholars have generally opined that in countries where Muslims are a religious minority, then what is referenced or what is referred to in this hadith, or how that hadith should be applied, is the imams of the local masajid. And so let's say that her wali was an imam, and that imam had very rigid requirements to permit a man to marry a woman under his charge. And the expectations that he had were, quite frankly, ridiculous. And very few candidates would be able to fulfill the requirements that he had, and the requirements that he had set were far and away beyond what Islam would require for an acceptable candidate. And the woman became frustrated. Then certainly she could move to terminate his wilaya, and someone else could be appointed. Another imam from another community, for example, could be appointed, etc. This is not something that should be done willy-nilly. It's not something that should be done arbitrarily, but it's something that should be done for cause. So if there is cause, then yes, the wilaya of the guardian can be terminated, and someone who is more fit and understands more correctly their role should be appointed, because at the end of the day, we're supposed to facilitate marriage. Marriage is something that Allah wants to take place, and He wants the obstacles that are not prescribed by Him. He wants those obstacles to be removed. He doesn't want us to create more obstacles. He wants the obstacles that exist to be overcome to the best of our ability.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Before I read the next question, I'll just kind of go back and forth. So, Sister Nabiha, if you have a question, you can go ahead and pose your question to the imam.
Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I actually recently met someone in a singles event who was a potential, and we started talking. It's only been like a week, and he just recently told me that he's talking to two people, and he's a little confused. And so I'm just wondering, are there any other steps I can take in a Islamic manner to move things forward?
I don't know necessarily if it's in your hands, given what you said that the potential shared. I think as you said, it's early in the process, and so I would assume that in a week's time, you haven't become just convinced that this is Mr. Right and there's no one else on the earth who could be a husband to me, etc. I don't think that in a week's time you reach that conclusion. And so my suggestion is to let things happen organically, not to force anything, and to realize, to put it quite bluntly, there are more fish in the sea. And sometimes things happen for a reason. And many times, in most cases, they happen for a reason. And perhaps him telling you that is an indication that maybe you need to look elsewhere. And you may come to find, after everything plays out, that this news was actually the best news you could have gotten. The thing that he said was the best thing you could have said, because you moved away from him, you really found, quote unquote, Mr. Right. So that's what I would say. We always have to, as Muslims, we have to trust Allah. And we have to trust Allah's plan. And in many cases, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He says, it is quite possible that you dislike something and it's actually good for you. And it's also quite possible that you like something and it's bad for you. Allah knows what is best for you and you do not know. And so if you meet someone and your heart kind of inclines toward them, you see that there's some compatibility, etc., and then for whatever reason things begin to come undone, or like you said, they give you some news that really doesn't bode well for the future with this particular person, we could become upset. And, we could try to force the issue, or we could just say, if this is good for me, Allah will make it happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's probably because it's not good for me. And so my advice would be to let things happen organically. And if you are actively looking for a husband, I would continue to actively look and to follow whatever course you have followed, whether it's seeking assistance from your parents, seeking advice and assistance from peers to find suitable candidates. I will continue to do that process, because at the end of the day, it's about your happiness, and your happiness may not be with this person, and that might be why they informed you of what they did. And so, like I said, I wouldn't let that discourage me. I would just take that maybe as a blessing in disguise.
Afwan, Sheikh Abdullah, I would like to add that Sister Ukhti Nabiha, alhamdulillah, I would hope that I don't think that the recording from last week is available, but I don't know if you caught the recording, not actually last week, earlier this week, where Sheikh Abdullah covered, I believe, 12 points in like a process for getting married. And I would say, to go along with what the Sheikh said, stick with your process. And when you find like someone trying to deviate from that process, or trying to rush your process or back out of your process, it may be, as Sheikh Abdullah said, maybe the best thing for you. That if it's outside of your process, or you have a wali, they don't want to deal with your wali, or he's wanting pictures and stuff, and this is why he's considering somebody else at the same time, because maybe he's maybe there's things that you want that he's looking for one thing and you're looking for something different, inshallah.
Susie, how many people are teaching on
Assalamu
this?
alaikum, Sister Hope, Sister Sabira, Jazakallah Khan for joining on stage. Before I get to you, Sister Hope, I'm going to read the next question. And
Okay.
then I'll come back to you, inshallah. So the other question was, how do you bring up polygyny to your wife and the new person coming in, and when?
Repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Okay. It said, go back. It says, how do you bring up polygyny to your wife and the new person coming in, and when would you do? Or when it's good to do that, I guess. That's what they meant.
All right. There's a few things I could say about this. What I'll say is, number one, I think the best thing to do is that before there's a new person coming in, that you've kind of had some discussions and you've kind of determined where your family's head is on the issue. Is there reluctance? Is there outright resistance? Is there interest and encouragement? And so I think that where their head is going to determine when you need to mention it to them. But I would say, in addition to that, so for example, if they are resistant, then yeah, you probably need to get them closer to reluctance or closer to acceptance before broaching that subject. So you continue to have talks with them and conversations with them and try to convince them, I guess, and make them try to see why this is something that you want to do, why this is something that's good to do, etc. Because I think if there's resistance, there's never going to be a good time to bring it up, to be honest with you. The second thing I wanted to say was I think the best course is honesty and candidness. That basically, if this is something that you've resolved yourself to do, then yeah, you need to be very forthcoming and you need to be very candid about it, and you should not withhold the information until it can no longer be withheld, and then it becomes a big mess. So don't take that course. And it's a crucial conversation. It's a difficult conversation to have. And that makes a lot of men reluctant to have it. They just want to avoid it. But trust me, as difficult as that conversation is going to be to have, it's going to be far better for you and better for your family if you're very candid about it in the beginning, as opposed to her finding out when it's basically finding out in a way that is unfortunate, creates bitterness and resentment, and finding out at a time that creates more problems than it solves, if you will. But as far as saying this is when you tell them, there's I don't think that you can say that. I think it's going to differ from situation to situation. But as I said, I think that basically you can look at spouses and you can put them in one of three categories. Outright, resistance. They're just basically not having it. You have those who are reticent. They're open to the idea, but there's a lot of trepidation. There's a lot of fears. There's a lot of concerns. And then you have those who are, they're pretty much open to the idea, and they might even be encouraging it. And if they're in that last category, then you can talk to them. You as they're encouraging you, you're already talking to them about it. They're probably walking you through or walking with you through the process. Reticent, I would start as soon as you kind of like become more than 50%, like in the 60, 70% or higher, that I'm going to do this, I want to do this, then yeah, that's the time to start talking about it and preparing her accordingly. If they're resistant, then yeah, you got a lot of work to do on their mindset before you can even start having that conversation about, hey, I'm moving in this direction. That's what I would say on that.
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah Khan. Sister Hope, the mic is yours.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
MashaAllah, thanks for having this space. May Allah reward all of you.
Ameen ya Rabbal
I
Alameen.
would just like to lend some advice to my sisters in that if you find yourself in a scenario where you notice a pattern in which every single person that you find that you bring to your wali and they've satisfied your qualifications and criteria for getting married, the wali
How many
blocks
people are answering
you
questions
from
on
actually
here? Why
marrying
am I
this
here?
person.
Yeah.
You may need to relieve your wali of their duties, in fact, because in some cases, and I know of 2 personal instances, in some cases your wali may be attracted to you and is waiting on the opportunity when you notice that and your eyes perchance fall upon them and consider them as someone that you would like to marry. So my advice is, if you notice that there's a pattern there, you meeting people over and over again, you guys like each other, there's a connection, they satisfy all of your criteria, but your wali just keeps saying no, flat out no, then if you continue having that person as your wali, you may spend a lot more time being single.
Didn't I basically
when
say
our
the
deen
same thing?
teaches us that we should not delay
So
getting
why are you
married.
repeating what I said?
That's all that I have to say. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. I would say that advice, alhamdulillah, but that applies if the wali is not a relative. If the wali is not the father or a relative, if the wali is the imam, or the sister is in a situation where even the imam can't be the wali, and it turns out that there's a brother that's unrelated and he can marry. We have those type of situations, but where the wali is a relative, that's not. Then we have to do other things to replace the wali, and the wali wouldn't want to marry the sister.
You are correct, Brother Abdul Fareed, and thank you for lending that information. Those are the advice I gave is in circumstances or instances where the wali is non-mahram. You're correct, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah, inshallah. Let me do a quick room reset, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everybody, thanks for joining. Tonight, this room is open on love and marriage with question and answers with Imam Abdullah Ansari. Inshallah, we're asking everybody to ask their questions and to be direct with their questions. Inshallah, we want to save all of the advices to the end. And with all due respect, because Brother Ansari is giving this class on Monday nights, he should be the one answering the questions to the audience, inshallah.
Thank you.
And this way we won't have any confusion or back and forth with what is being taught in the class, inshallah. Not saying that it is, but just kind of want to keep things going steady because we only have like a limited time here tonight. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sabira, the mic is yours.
After Zahida, after Sabira goes, inshallah, I have there's some questions that came in. I found the questions that were written. So there's a couple that I will read off after her, inshallah, or one.
Inshallah. So mine is kind of a follow-up question to the sister who was discussing that she was speaking with a candidate, that they were, I think they had a couple of conversations, but it was only a weekend. And I know that this comes up a lot, just for clarification, that especially when you're in the early stages of meeting people, that it is permissible for sisters to have, until there's an actual engagement, sisters are free to have conversations with multiple people. I guess that would be my question, just to clarify whether that's acceptable and maybe recommended so that a sister isn't just honed in necessarily on one person, inshallah.
Just to be clear, what we don't encourage sisters, and we talked about this a little bit on Monday, is we don't encourage sisters to basically take it upon themselves to do all of the legwork. to identify candidates, to vet those candidates, to basically put them through an interview process, and then determine, yeah, this is the guy. And then at that point, they enlist the services of a quote unquote wali. This is not what we're encouraging. And from the questions, that's the sense I'm getting. Now, I try to give the sister the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt that that's not what she was saying. But just the way that things are getting said makes me afraid that someone else might get that, might reach that understanding. And then they would think, yeah, this is what the brother basically said, it's okay to do that because that's what I understood. And at no point did he say otherwise. And so I just want to be clear that we are not encouraging sisters to basically, as I said, do the legwork and seek out candidates and interview candidates and enter into conversations with candidates, whether it be one candidate or 10 candidates simultaneously, and then basically decide on that person and then bring the wali in to be a rubber stamp. That being said, if a sister has a representative, a wali, a guardian, and that guardian basically has identified a pool of candidates, if you will, and he is engaging those candidates and allowing the girl under the woman under his charge. I'm sorry, I keep saying girl. I apologize. The woman under his charge to have conversations to kind of gauge her level of comfort with the candidate. Then yeah, that's more than fine. And there are some ahadith which talk about a man not. The word in Arabic is derived from khutbah, which basically means to propose. That it's not permissible for a man to propose to a woman who has already received a proposal. That's not the stage we're talking about. And so if there was more than one candidate and this process was guided by the wali, by the muwakkal, by the wakil, then there's no problem in that. There's no harm in that. But I do want to be emphatically clear that we're not encouraging sisters to basically, basically become the most eligible bachelorette. And she's looking for the most eligible bachelor. And she's like using different methods and means to get in contact with people and enter into discussions with people which are not guided, and there's no oversight from a guardian. We talked about that on Monday. One of the 12 points was have a guardian. It's essential to have a guardian. There's a reason why the Prophet appointed the guardian. And a lot of sisters are getting burned by men who are wolves in sheep's clothing, and they're getting burned because there's no male guardian, male representative who can see a lot of the tricks and the treachery and the deception that are being committed by some of these men who are out there, these predatory men, these predators who are out there. They're not privy to a lot of this, and their emotions can easily be played on. But when there's a man there and he steps in, usually he can identify those tricks and those deceitful practices and protect her from that.
Brother Abdul Fareed, can you read one question, then we'll jump to C and then back to the other question, inshallah.
Nah, inshallah. So one of the questions that came in at your last was from a brother who asked, should brothers have conversations with sisters after they are made aware that the sister either doesn't have a guardian or has a guardian that isn't really involved or that isn't really active? What should brothers do when they encounter this from a sister? So the brother is asking about a sister. She either doesn't have a guardian, doesn't think the guardian needs to be involved, or the guardian himself is just not very much involved. How should a brother proceed with those sisters?
The brother should reach out to the wali. He should find out who the wali is and reach out to him and basically say, in this way, I came to know that this sister who was under your charge, I came to know that she's not married. I came to know that you're the wali. I'm interested in trying to find out if we're compatible, if we're a match, if we're a good fit for each other. And I'd like for you to, facilitate that and help that. And then based upon his response, the person should go from there. So if the person becomes very proactive and he says, okay, I'll gladly assist with that, and he goes into go mode, that's great. If he doesn't, and he leaves the person kind of in a limbo state and he decides to move on, that's also acceptable as well. But if the brother sees that for whatever reason, the wali is not an active participant in the process, he has to try to make him an active participant. And if he sees that basically the attitude of the people with whom he's dealing, the sister and the wali, is that the wali is only interested in being brought in when everything is pretty much a done deal, then yeah, he shouldn't be a part of that. He shouldn't participate in that process, because that's not how it should work. And so that's what I would advise the brother to do, is that sometimes what happens is that we meet people and we don't necessarily meet them through their wali, and we meet them innocently. But when we meet them and we realize that there is a spark, there is some mutual interest, then at that point, do you have a wali? Yeah, I have a wali. Okay, well, can I get his name and information so that I can get in touch with him? That's how that should go. And then he should get in touch with him, and he should encourage him, if he needs encouragement, to be an active participant. Remind him of Allah, remind him of his duty before Allah, and remind him of the importance of his role. And his role is not to be just a rubber stamp. And hopefully he'll be responsive to that, and he'll take an active role in the process as opposed to an inactive role in the process.
So what about the sisters who don't have a wali,
then,
or the sisters who don't want to, they're trying not to involve the wali? How should the brother proceed in both of those situations?
If she doesn't have one, then he should encourage her to get one. He should say, listen, yeah, there is some interest, but I don't think that we should proceed if there's no wali involved. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and solicit the services of a wali. And once that is done, have him contact me. Basically, that's what I would recommend. And if she's a sister who says, well, I do have a wali, but I don't want him to know anything until I've kind of made up my mind about you or kind of vetted you myself. And then if I decide that that you're the one, so to speak, then I'm going to let him know about it. Then you say, yeah, that's not how it works. That's just not how it works, and I'm not okay with being a part of the process if that's how the process is going to go. And then it would be up to her. The ball would be squarely in her court. So if she chose to be adamant about how she wants things to go, and you don't approve of it, and you shouldn't approve of it, then yeah, again, there's more fish in the sea. Hate to put it like that, but that's the way it is. We want to try the best that we can. Listen, we're human beings, and it's part of our nature to want to be in loving relationships. And sometimes that desire to be in a loving relationship, it clouds our judgment. And that's one of the reasons why the wali should be there. But it's also one of the reasons why we, on the other side of it as men, we should say, we have to have this wali here. We have to do this, and we have to try our best not to allow our judgment to be clouded. Because yeah, if you are really feeling the sister, so to speak, then yeah, you might be tempted to just go with the flow and do things her way and let the wali come in to the process once you guys have kind of decided that you're going to get married. But again, we have to try not to allow our desire to be in a relationship, our loneliness, the spark that we may feel or connection that we may feel with a certain intended, if you will, or potential, if you will. We can't let that. We have to try the best of our abilities not to let that cloud our judgment and cause us to do something which is un-Islamic, or to take an approach which is un-Islamic or not fully Islamic.
Alhamdulillah. All right, so Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sun. You can go next, and then I'll read. I think I have another. No, I don't have another question. I don't think right now. Go ahead, Sister Sun. The mic is yours.
Okay, thanks. Wa alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum. So I'm in this situation where I'm a widow after 20 years, and I still am crazy in love with my spouse, and also feel I still want to be a part of a pair. And I'm not sure the approach here, if I should still remain patient and heal, get myself in a situation where I'm a better candidate as a wife, or should be more actively searching. That's my question. Hope it's clear.
Okay. Well, first of all, Sister Sunny, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on your deceased husband. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill his grave with light. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him Jannat al-Firdaus al-A'la, the highest level of paradise. Also, let me say that I'm sorry for your loss. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you a cool consolation from himself subhanahu wa ta'ala. With respect to, desiring to be in a relationship, and we just kind of touched on that. It's just human not to want to be alone, to be in a relationship, to be loved by someone, to love someone. We have love to give and no one to give it to, etc. So this is completely normal. And you should embrace that. You shouldn't try to suppress those feelings. They're normal feelings, and we shouldn't try to suppress those normal feelings. That being said, whether or not you should heal or should you actively seek marriage, it kind of just depends. It kind of just depends. And I know that's not necessarily the answer you want, but it really depends on where you are in the stages of grief. Where are you? You kind of indicated that you're not over him. You're still madly in love with him. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to marry someone and you can't fully be a wife to them. You can't fully give yourself to them because you're still madly in love with your deceased husband. So you have to kind of be candid and honest and frank with yourself. You have to do some real deep introspection and self-contemplation and say, can I really, really be a wife to a person or to a husband? Can I do that right now where I am in the stages of grief? And if the honest answer is no, then the answer would be that you continue to heal and you continue to be patient. And if you say, yes, as much as I love my husband, I do believe that I can love someone else. I do believe that I can be a wife fully and completely to another man. If you really, really believe that, and you know that that's really the honest answer, then I would advise you to actively begin to seek marriage. But I just want to say this to you, and I want to say it to our audience as well, that many of us, especially those of us who have been married previously, whether our marriage ended in divorce, whether it ended in the death of that spouse, we have to understand that when you have been in a long-standing relationship with someone, there's a lot of baggage. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Some of the baggage is good. There's some trauma. There are some connections. There are some expectations. There are some habits that have been formed, etc. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to get into another relationship and make another person miserable because you're expecting that person to be like that other person, to do things the way the other person did, to know things about you that the other person knew after 10 years of marriage or 20 years of marriage or 30 years of marriage. And when they don't meet those expectations, when they are different because they're a different person, they're punished for that. Or they don't receive all of you. They don't get your love. They don't get they don't get the level of love that the other person received. They don't get the understanding. They don't get the forgiveness. They don't get the passes and the overlooking that the other spouse got. That isn't fair to them. And we have to understand that marriage is not just about us. It's not just about us. It's about the other person's happiness as well. It's not just about us making ourselves happy, getting ours, as they say, but it's about the other person being happy as well. And you don't want to deprive someone of happiness. You don't want to be selfish in that way. And so this is the advice, and this is not specifically to our sister Sunny, but it's just to everybody in this room. If you're coming out of a relationship, no matter how you came out of that relationship, you have to be, painfully, brutally honest with yourself about, are you broken? Are you broken? Are there certain things that that because of your brokenness, because of the damage, because of the trauma, that you are going to be someone who you're going to be a problem for that other person? There's going to be instances where they say something innocently, but it's triggering for you. And you're going to, let them have it. And it's not their fault. They haven't done anything wrong. You know this about yourself. You know that I'm angry because of what happened. I'm bitter because of what happened. And I'm going to carry that now into another relationship, and I'm going to punish another person and make them miserable. We can't do that. We can't do that. And so that's why we have to be honest with ourselves coming out of those relationships. Where am I in that healing process? Have I healed fully or healed enough to be able to really, really be a good husband or a good wife to another person? You have to be honest, and you can't be selfish. Look, I don't want to be alone anymore. And so based upon that selfish motive, I'm going to get into a relationship, and that person isn't going to get all of me. In fact, they might get the worst of me. They might get the worst of me. Why? Because I'm still bitter. I'm still resentful. I'm still damaged goods. And that's not fair, and we can't be unfair. We can't do that to others. And so we really have to strongly consider where we are in the process. And based upon that, that's the move that will determine what moves we should make.
MashaAllah, thank you for your dua and your words, Aki.
Barakallahu fiki.
Just another quick little reset. Inshallah, thanks for joining Q&A on love and marriage with Imam Al-Ansari. We're asking that if anyone have any questions, to please raise your hand and come on stage. If you do not want to pose a question on stage, you can send it in the back channel, and we'll read the question off. We want to keep the questions clear and direct, and any advices should be done at the end of the room. The question that I have in the back channel, Brother Ansari, is, okay, my question is it a sign to let it go when the brother distanced himself after we talked for a couple of months, and his reason is that he wants space to get closer to Allah?
I don't know if you can necessarily determine if his reasoning is anything other than what he said, other than to ask him directly and tell him that this is what I feel. This is how I read your messaging. This is how I read your behavior. And tell me I'm wrong. I think that's how we have to be. I think this is very important in relationships. I think that candor and being honest and openly communicating, I think this is one of the things that is lacking in relationships, and this is one of the reasons why relationships fail, is because we lack the ability or we lack the willingness to communicate openly and to just say how we really feel. And so it's quite possible that rather than saying, I don't like you, I don't think we're compatible, I'm no longer interested, what people will do is they will sometimes let their behavior do the talking, right? And sometimes people will actually need space. And when they say that, it'll be interpreted by the other person as them saying, I'm not interested, you're not my type, whatever. Rather than, on the one hand, say something other than what you really mean, or on the other hand, assume that they're saying something which they haven't said. The best course in these relationships is to just be direct. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And on the other hand, if you think that the message that was actually conveyed is not really the message that you should have received, you believe that the person said something, but they meant something else, the best thing to do is just be direct and ask directly, did you mean this? Are you saying this? And I think this is where our relationships come undone, is because we don't do this. We don't do this. We're quick to assume, although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ijtanibu kathiran min adh-dhann," avoid a great deal of suspicion. We're quick to assume things about each other. That's one thing. And the second thing is that we're not candid. We're not direct. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us not to be like that. He says, وَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا, and say a word which is correct and straight to the point. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And so basically, because we don't do this, even though our religion teaches us to, a lot of times there's problem. People run away from these crucial conversations. People give each other the silent treatment. A person asks a direct question, do you love me? And rather than saying, if you really feel that way, yes, I love you, we say other things. And what we don't realize what we're doing by saying other things is you're saying something by not saying something. If a person asks you a direct question, says, do you love me? And the person says, you're very nice, you're sweet, you're the smartest person I know, you're very generous. They're saying all these things, but they're not saying, yes, I love you. Then what they're saying is they don't. At least that's the message you're going to get. If they do, they should just say it. And sometimes, some of us, we do, but we say everything except what? I do. And this is a problem. This is a failing. That we continue to fall into, a pitfall that we continue to fall into in our relationships. You send a message that you don't intend to send. And so we have to be very, very candid with each other. And if the sister is intimating, if she's gathering or extrapolating from the person's behavior that they just are not into them anymore, then I wouldn't beat around the bush and I wouldn't make assumptions. I'm going to ask a direct question and I'm going to expect the person to be honest and not waste my time. And she should say it like that. She'd be polite. The other thing, too, is that sometimes we're in relationships, something that's connected to this, and I think it's important for everyone to hear this, is that sometimes in relationships, we need something from our partner, but we don't know how to ask for it. And so we do things that will actually make that partner give us the opposite of what we want. So, for example, sometimes you're in a relationship and you want attention, and the person is not giving you the attention that you want. They're working long hours. They're going to work early, staying late, bringing work home. They're not paying attention to you. They're not, loving you. They're not being intimate with you, and so on and so forth. And the person is getting frustrated. And so they start making sarcastic remarks. They start saying things like, I have Facebook friends, I see more than you. Another late night at work, you might as well just, take your pajamas and sleep at work. They'll make comments like this, right? And when the person is hearing these sarcastic and mean-spirited comments, that makes them what? Not want to spend time with the person. So what the person is doing by saying these things, instead of coming outright and saying, hey, can you spend some time with me? Can you make time for me? Instead of saying what they really mean, they say other things that make the problem worse. Instead of defusing, they light a fuse and they make things worse. And so it's very important for us to improve in our relationships, improve our communication skills, and learn how to communicate with our spouses in a way, and our intendeds or potentials in a way where there's no mistaking what we intend. And that goes for the people who are communicating through their behavior, a message where they may not a message that they may not intend. Then they need to what? They need to alter their behavior to be consistent with what they really feel inside. And on the other side, the flip side of it, if somebody is behaving in a way and it makes you think, oh, they mean this or they mean that, or they're trying to tell me this or tell me that, rather than assume, ask them directly. But what we have to do, the overall message that I want you to leave with, is that we have to do a better job of communicating in our relationships, because one of the greatest causes of the destruction of a marriage or the dissolution of a relationship is a failure to communicate. And most people in relationships struggle with communicating. They struggle with that. And you have one partner, maybe who gets it, and they're trying to make the other person say, look, man, you're the one. I love you. I care for you. But one of the things that's going to make this not work is the fact that you shut me out. You don't talk to me. You don't communicate. You bottle things up. And then when you finally do tell me something, you're exploding on me. You're yelling at me. You're verbally abusive. And that pushes me away from you. This is happening. It continues to happen in our relationships. And for some reason, we keep stepping on the same landmine. So brothers and sisters, I encourage you not to make assumptions, because it's not from our deen, and to speak candidly and and clearly to your spouses and to the people that you're in a relationship with.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Amira. I'm going to get your question, and then I think Brother Abu Farid has one last question. We're coming up on the hour time that was allotted for the question and answers. So if you would, go ahead and pose your question, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So, I got my timer on. I don't want to go over your time limit, but it's intense and I'm quick. My first marriage, I was approached, and he was asking me certain questions about religion because of how I looked when he approached me. So,
Ukhti Amira, I think Sister Zahida wanted to say something real quick.
Susan, yes. What have we been saying the whole time?
We got 6 minutes left.
And so he had questions. So I said, meet me at the masjid. He met me at the masjid. I had friends at the masjid, the imam, my potential walis and so forth, who are strong, committed people in the community. So he was walking into a diamond field. So anyway, they ended up testing him through things like basketball, dawah, and things
Susan,
like that. And
do you hear a question?
Passing the test like you wouldn't believe, because they all knew how to do that. It was amazing. And so in my next opportunity to attract the right one for me, should I allow myself to do what I always do, and I can't help doing it? If I'm a salesperson, I'm always in discovery mode. I'm always the one asking the questions first. Does that make sense? And what I mean by that is, let's say I find someone in the lineup to be potentials based on faith and actions, because you've already gone through my first test, and it's a rigorous test. Now you're ready to play ball.
Wow.
In
All right,
what
play
way
ball.
do I work with my umam and the people like y'all? We're here on Clubhouse to bring this to reality. That's my
You're
question.
back, Biden.
I'm a mirror. I'm complete.
Amira, I don't know how to answer that question, other than to say that from what I did understand from the question, that yes, you have a right to be very diligent in your search for a match, and you have a right to ask very pointed questions and to determine if this person is a fit for you. You have every right to do that. And every candidate, any person who's interested in marriage has a right to do that with any candidate. And so, yeah, I would encourage you to do that and continue to search doggedly for the right match. We want to be happy. When we get married, we don't want to be unhappy. And we don't want to make a purely emotional decision, or we don't want to make a decision out of expedience. And so, yeah, I would definitely encourage you that you actively seek for your soulmate. And that may require you to ask specific questions. It may require you to put them through, as you said, a very rigorous series of tests or whatever. I mean, whatever it is that you have to do to basically determine if this is the right situation for you to be in. That's perfectly fine. Just make sure that there is a wali there with you along every step of the way, and that you are consulting with them, because sometimes we may set expectations which are extremely lofty, and as a consequence, we're being unrealistic with respect to those expectations. And one of the 12 steps that we mentioned on Monday was set realistic expectations. So just make sure you're doing that. But as far as trying to make sure that this person is the right person for you, and having specific questions that you ask and certain paces that you put them through, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Thank you, brother. And I'm happy you said have somewhere near you, because I had the person who introduced me to Al-Islam to check my ex-husband out. We ended up lasting 15 years. That was a solid connection. But you understand, the person who introduced me to Islam, without knowing that he was introducing me to Islam because of his habits, every morning he would come in at a certain time, read this book. I didn't know what the book was, but he didn't let anybody disturb him from reading this book for 5 minutes, because he knew we had the sales meeting in a few more minutes. He was, and so one day I was so captivated by that. So I sat down. Alhamdulillah. And so I just want to say I thank him for introducing me to Islam, and giving me the opportunity to talk to you and everybody else, and introduce my daughter to Islam. So thank you, because I don't know who I'm gonna meet, but they have to be a bad something. In a good way.
MashaAllah.
Thank you for listening. Ameen.
All right, Sister Zahida, we can take one more quick one, and then we'll have to close out. Yeah.
Now I have one from the back channel, and I think it's pretty important from reading it that you can tackle it, inshallah. So I'll read what the sister stated, her question. She stated that, Assalamu alaikum. My fiance and I are a young couple in our early and late 30s. We need serious premarital guidance when neither of us has ever been married and neither of us have children. We have difficulty communicating and understanding each other all of the time. We've never even discussed the 5 pillars of marriage, which is beneficial for a healthy marriage. We don't even know where to start to find affordable premarital counseling services on our fixed budget. We desire a safe, strong, loving, and healthy relationship and marriage. So where can we be guided to go to obtain our wishes?
Alhamdulillah. Brother Ansari, before you answer the question, I would just like to say to everybody in the room, please be aware that, please be mindful that Brother Ansari holds the Love and Marriage rooms every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please click on the Monopoly House at the top so that you'll get notifications when these rooms are scheduled. And after this question will be the last question for the night, inshallah. So if you have any other questions, please send them in the back channel because the room will be closing after Imam is done, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Tayyib, Ali, this is a very good question, and I'd like to spend some time thinking about the best way to respond to it. I'd like to see it in black and white and ponder it and respond thoughtfully. So I'd like that question to be emailed to me, and I will answer it either in another forum like this, or I will answer it on the as-Saafiy Q&A, and I'll send the couple, I'll send them a response. I'll send them an actual emailed response along with my own recorded response on my platforms. And so that's how I'd like to deal with that particular question, because it's not a quick question. It's not one I can answer quickly.
Nah, I'll send it to you, inshallah. A sister asked a question last week that didn't get answered. It's a shorter question. Can I give you that one, inshallah?
I'm just afraid that we're gonna go way over our time. I was hoping that we could just get one in real quick and just maybe take 2 or 3 minutes additional, but we're already at the 8:33 mark, and I kind of want to just stick with what we had agreed on, and I don't want to upset. Obviously, I have other obligations and other people that I have to answer to, and so I just want to make sure that that everybody gets that I'm fair to everyone. I do want to say in closing, I imagine that there may be a few other people who had questions and they didn't get an opportunity to ask. I'm open to doing this again. Maybe we can, because this is a topic that does generate a lot of questions, and people have specific questions that they want to ask, and those questions should not go unanswered because of the importance of marriage. And sometimes getting those questions answered can mean the difference between a couple staying together or breaking up. So yeah, we want to help as best as we can in that area, and so maybe we can arrange to do another one of these next week or thereafter. But I do want to say in closing that I come to answer your questions. I come to provide the knowledge that I have. I don't claim that it's exhaustive or encyclopedic, but I have spent a great deal of time studying, and I love to share not just the book knowledge, but my experience. And I think it's important when that happens, and Zahida kind of touched on this, and I just want to kind of reiterate what she said. I think that when that happens, we kind of have to let that person who is giving their time, and they do have the expertise, I think we kind of have to let them kind of deal with the situations and deal with the questions and deal with the queries as they see fit based upon their knowledge and their experience. That being said, I was a student for a long time. And one of the things I learned very quickly is that sometimes the teacher doesn't say exactly what you think they should say. They don't say exactly what you would have said had the question been asked to you. But they do say what they think based upon their knowledge and experience, what they think is appropriate and what they think is sufficient. And the one thing that we learned early on is to accept that and to remain quiet and to learn something from those teachers by the way that they answered the questions and how they didn't say certain things that we thought they should have said. They didn't say things that we would have said. And sometimes as you continue to study with your mouth closed and your ears open, you start to see, now I see why they said that and didn't say this. Now I see why they didn't broach that subject or they didn't address that, etc. It's important, brothers and sisters, that we kind of have that level of mutual respect for each other, and particularly respect for the people who have done some studying, and that we don't, if we're going to have a Q&A session with X person, it's their thing and they're going to do it their way, and we're going to respect that. And if we want to have a Q&A session where we answer questions and we give advice, then we should do that. But if it's their thing, it's their thing. And this is just my advice. I say it respectfully. I don't say it arrogantly. I'm just saying, because one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us is that we have to be careful how we move because of how it can, because of the bad feelings it can create. So we have the verse in Surah Al-Isra where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُ الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنْزَغُ بَيْنَهُمْ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ كَانَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوًّا مُبِينًا. Says, and say to my servants of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they should say that which is best. They should be careful, choose their words carefully, be careful what they do, be careful how they behave, especially when they behave in a way that could be interpreted negatively, could be interpreted poorly. It's open to more than one interpretation, and it could be interpreted in the most negative way. Be careful about that. Why? Because the shaitan sows discord amongst you. Because that's what the shaitan likes to do. When there's any blanks, he likes to fill the blanks. When there's any way to interpret something in the most negative way, especially amongst believers, to make one believer turn against another, the shaitan is going to make sure it's interpreted in that worst way because he wants to create discord. Inna shaitana kana lil-insani aduwwan mubina, because the shaitan is a clear enemy to mankind. And so we have to reflect on that. And so I'm just asking kindly, inshallah, we'll do this again. And when we do it, we have to be respectful to the speaker, whoever that is, and let them do their thing. Let them answer the questions in the way that they think the questions need to be answered in light of what they've understood from the questions. And if we have a comment or a suggestion, it's kind of like Zahida said toward the end, we can have room for comments. We can have room for that. But I don't think that we should have 2 or 3 people answering the questions at the same time. That's just how I feel about it. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبي محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. May Allah bless you all for attending. May Allah bless your houses, bless your spouses, bless your children, bless your income and your sources of revenue. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and make you blessed wherever you may be. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.